Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories this hour. The Israeli military conducted a raid in southern Syria, seizing weapons and questioning several suspects involved in weapons trafficking. The raid took place on Saturday, according to Israeli officials. Egypt sent 2 fuel trucks carrying 107 tons of diesel to Gaza as the region faces severe fuel shortages impacting hospital services. Gaza's health ministry has reported that fuel lacks have forced doctors to prioritize critical patients. Armed groups attacks Syria's internal security forces in Sawida, killing 1 and injuring others. The attack violated a ceasefire agreed last month in the Druze region, which had already seen fierce factional clashes, resulting in the deaths of hundreds. A Russian missile strike on Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine injured at least 7 people and damaged dozens of homes and civilian infrastructure. 2 of the injured were hospitalized after the late Saturday attack, according to the regional governor. Iran's military commander-in-chief stated that threats from Israel remain, stressing the importance of taking every threat seriously. This comes after the Israel-US strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities in June and Tehran's retaliatory missile and drone attacks. EU Foreign Affairs Chief Kaja Kallas condemned videos showing emaciated Israeli hostages as appalling and barbaric. She called for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages and for humanitarian aid to reach Gaza. Russia's Ministry for Emergency Services lifted a tsunami warning for the Kamchatka Peninsula after a 7.0 magnitude earthquake hit the Kuril Islands. Although the waves were expected to be low, people were advised to move away from the shore. The Office of Special Counsel has opened an investigation into Jack Smith, the Justice Department's special counsel, over alleged partisan political activity. The inquiry focuses on Smith's actions during his criminal cases against President Donald Trump, with the agency able to impose fines and sanctions, but not criminal penalties. Now for our top story this hour, we start in the Middle East, where the Palestinian Ministry of Health has reported that hospitals in Gaza have reported the deaths of 6 adults due to starvation and malnutrition over the past 24 hours. According to the Gaza-run health ministry, this brings the total of those who have died due to starvation and malnutrition across the enclave to 175, including 93 children. This comes as multiple aid agencies have warned that the worst case of famine is now unfolding in Gaza. However, Israel's Prime Minister and much of his right-wing coalition have said that there is no starvation in the enclave. We're now joined by our guest, Professor Kobi Michael, who's a senior researcher at the INSS and Misgav Institute. He joins us live from Israel. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Michael, on the program. We, like the rest of the world, is receiving these images of skeletal children throughout the Gaza Strip. It's angered not just people who are watching said news, but also international governments. That includes Israel's allies, which has led, obviously, to take action and to call for the unlimited flow of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. I want to ask you, how do you analyze and how effective do you think that distribution is right now, since Israel has opened more humanitarian corridors in the Gaza Strip?
Hello, and thank you for having me. First of all, I would like to mention, even to emphasize that if we are talking about starvation, I think that it will be much more suitable to talk about the starvation of the Israeli hostages in the Hamas tunnels beneath the ground in the Gaza Strip. And we have some footages that were released by Hamas just in the day before yesterday, that indicate what starvation is.
Professor Michael, we can indeed talk about that, but I want you to talk about how aid is being distributed. Obviously, starvation has been reported in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli hostages are also in the Gaza Strip. We saw that video, that harrowing video today that Hamas released of that hostage in Hamas's tunnels. How do you, and we've also seen that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and much of his government say that there is no starvation in Gaza. What do you say to this?
I'm saying that he is totally right. There is no starvation. It doesn't mean that there are no people who suffer from hunger, and this is because the aid, the humanitarian aid, which is entered to the Gaza Strip, does not reach to them, and this happens in areas which are under Hamas control. And we have to ask ourselves how it comes. How it comes that in these specific areas which are under Hamas control, or in these specific areas which are under the responsibility of UN agencies, people have no access to food. Okay, because there is no any shortage of food or medical or water or fuel. Everything goes into the Gaza Strip without any limitations, and we have to understand the system, how the system works. There are three major entrances of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. The northern one, from Zikim area in the Israeli side, we have convoys of the UN that goes directly to the city of Gaza, which is totally controlled by Hamas. And we see what is happening there with these convoys, with these dozens of trucks of humanitarian aid that are looted and stolen by Hamas and by the mob, which is organized by Hamas in order to create the image or the narrative of starvation.
Professor, apologies. Critics to you would say that due to the fact that Israel isn't letting international media into the Gaza Strip, no one can really see what's going on. And your words are directly contradicting that of the World Health Organization, that of the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, which issued an emergency alert and that said that the worst case of famine is unfolding across Gaza. And this has also obviously been the stem of some of Israel's closest allies soon to recognize a Palestinian state at the United Nations. This is what they've called for, the unlimited flow of aid into the Gaza Strip. Why do you think that there is no starvation in Gaza?
There is no starvation in Gaza, full stop, okay? With regard to the influence of international media, correspondents and reporters, I think that Israel does a mistake in this regard, not because we have to hide something, but due to other reasons. And I think that if the reporters of the international media are taking responsibility upon themselves, they should be allowed to enter the Gaza Strip freely. But you cannot rely on them that their reports will be necessarily reliable reports whenever these reports are coming from the Gaza Strip, whenever they are in the Gaza Strip under the control of Hamas, because they will have two options: to report what Hamas wants to report, or to be murdered by Hamas. But this is their business, not Israel's business, and I think that Israel is wrong in this regard. But reporters of the international media do enter the Gaza Strip with the IDF forces, because when they enter with the IDF forces, the IDF is capable to secure them, to defend them. But as I told you before, at the beginning of my response, I think that this is a mistake that Israel does. And if I would have been responsible for that, I would have allowed that. With regard to the other question that you asked about the declaration of the 19 countries following the Saudi-French initiative, I think that it is not less than a scandal. It is, I would say, a reflection of a very strong will not to learn anything from history. They eventually revive the Palestinian victimhood, they revive the Palestinian refugeehood, they revive the Palestinian, I would say, refusal to accept the right of the Jewish people for self-determination, because the idea of self-determination is mentioned in this declaration 3 times, but in all the 3 times it refers to the right of the Palestinian people for self-determination. What about the right of the Jewish people for self-determination? This is something that the Palestinians for 120 years refused to accept, and this is the core problem of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Their historical refusal to accept our right to live here in a nation state of the Jewish people in any borders. And don't be confused, please, from the slogan of two-state solution, because when they say two-state solution, they refuse to add only one word: two-nation-state solution. In their eyes, two-state solution is Palestine as the nation state of the Palestinian people, and the state of Israel as the state of all of its citizens, without any religious, cultural, national identity. And this is exactly the problem, okay? And when they mention once again the idea of the Palestinian refugees, and we are talking about the 5th generation of Palestinian refugees. This is the only refugee populace in the entire world that, instead of decreased, it increased, okay, in each year. And they are talking about the UN Resolution 194, which in the Palestinian interpretation is the right of return.
Professor Kobi, I'm very sorry to interrupt. We have to move on. You are staying with us, however, to discuss further updates and related updates at that. Tens of thousands took to Sydney's iconic harbour bridge, defying heavy rain to call for peace in Gaza and demand urgent aid deliveries. The March for Humanity comes amid growing concerns over starvation in the Gaza Strip, where nearly 60,000 people have been killed in almost 2 years of war, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Marchers carried pots and pans, symbols of hunger, as they chanted for Palestine. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange also joined the crowd. Pressure is mounting on Israel, with France, Canada, and possibly the UK moving to recognise a Palestinian state. Israel denies blocking aid and blaming Hamas for the humanitarian crisis. We are once again joined by Professor Kobi Michael to discuss this further. Professor Michael, the movement seems to be growing around the world. Allies are putting sanctions on Israeli ministers, not all. Benjamin Netanyahu has a arrest warrant in the International Criminal Court. There are, as we've previously discussed, calls to recognise a state of Palestine. What are your thoughts of Israel's image on not just the international stage, but its image with its Western allies, those alliances that it values so dearly?
I think that we are in a very troubling situation. I mean Israel. I think that we are in a very troubling situation coming to the Western or free world civilization, generally speaking, when leaders like Macron or the Prime Minister, the British Prime Minister or the Canadian Prime Minister and some others are willing to support Hamas in their way, although they say that they do not support Hamas, but they do support Hamas by appeasing the radical Islamism, the violent, barbaric Islamism, which is represented by Hamas, and by accepting and internalizing and adopting the Hamas narrative. And you mentioned the Ministry of Health, which is Hamas, okay, in the Gaza Strip, and the number of 60,000 fatalities. And even if we accept these numbers, even if we accept these numbers, we have to ask ourselves some questions. First, how many of these 60,000 are Hamas operatives? How many of these 60,000 were killed by Hamas or by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad? How many of them are natural death, because they do not distinguish between natural death and fatalities from the war, and some other questions if you want, and then you will reach to a much smaller numbers with regard to civilian fatalities. And as John Spencer said, not Kobi Michael, but John Spencer said that the IDF eventually set a golden standard with regard to collateral damage in comparison to any war and to any Western army.
Professor Michael, let's move back to Israel's image. Let's move back from the battlefield and talk about Israel's image. How do you think diplomatically that Israel is doing right now in the Western world? Do you see Israel's? How do you think Israel is working its PR campaign? And what are your thoughts on how it will recover its image? Certainly, this war has put a dent in that. As we've said previously, that these Western allies are slowly signaling worry, mainly at the way that Israel is handling this war. And how do you think Israel could have done better, can possibly recover from what's going on right now on the public image front?
I think that this is a very significant, substantial, essential challenge that Israel has to tackle. Eventually, this is the 8th or the 9th front that Israel fights. I think that we still do not do what we have to do with regard to all the idea or all the world of cognitive war or consciousness war. But I think that things will be improved once the war will be ended in the Gaza Strip. But it is a very severe situation. It is a very troubling issue. And unfortunately, this is something that brings or creates a very heavy burden on the Israeli shoulders when the war is not ended yet. I think that once the war will be ended and Israel will accomplish the defeat of Hamas and will accomplish what should be accomplished in Iran, things will be calmer. And I think that in a historical retrospective, the West or the free world will thank Israel for remaining and being the last fourth of this civilization in front of the barbaric, murderous attack or invasion of Hamas and what Hamas represents.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Michael, for joining us on the programme. Pleasure to get your insight on that story. Now we move over to Europe, where we go on to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And a bridge in the Ukrainian city of Kherson has been heavily damaged following a Russian airstrike. The bridge, which connects the city centre to the Korabel district, has been rendered largely unusable, prompting local authorities to urge residents to evacuate. Meanwhile, in Molokhayev, a Russian missile strike overnight has left devastation in its wake. Several houses and residential buildings have been reduced to rubble. At least 7 people have also been reported wounded. Ukrainian Prime Minister Yulia Savchenko condemned the attack, underscoring the ongoing toll on civilians as the conflict continues. We're now joined by Jim Rice, who's a professor of international law. He joins us live from Vigan in the Philippines. Jim, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Jim, what do you make of the escalating attacks on Ukraine from Russia, mainly aerial attacks on Ukrainian cities, densely populated civilian infrastructure here being targeted by the Russian military? Putin says he still wants peace here. What are your thoughts on how Russia are conducting themselves in this war?
Okay, thanks for having me on, Thomas. I'll try to be succinct and I'll try to be to the point. Again, I'm asked to bring my knowledge of international law to this program. I'm not a military strategist, so I can't really speak to that issue. However, as I've mentioned many times before, this is an illegal war of aggression that Putin has launched against the state of Ukraine. It's illegal, and his entire strategy has been to focus on civilians, civilian centers such as schools, hospitals, and civilian infrastructure. So again, these are more war crimes that Putin is responsible personally, and the Russian Federation more generally. So this is a worrying development, and I can only hope that the European Union and the United States will stand by Ukraine during this time.
Yes, indeed, Jim. And in regards to international law, these war crimes that you say that Vladimir Putin has been committing throughout this war, including the invasion of 2022, what implications could that have for Russia in the long term?
Well, again, it's a huge issue. The international community and the International Criminal Court has got a limited record in terms of bringing perpetrators to justice, although there is some success there. But I suppose the wider question is, can the international community as a whole, which, by that I mean primarily the European Union and the United States, which has sometimes been referred to as the coalition of the willing, can they stand together in resisting this aggressive war by Russia? The thing that most people don't understand, and it seems that Donald Trump in particular does not understand, is that there is no motivation whatsoever on the part of Vladimir Putin to come to the peace table and to reach a comprehensive ceasefire and a durable peace. He's not interested in that whatsoever. I say that because of his record. And so the only thing that can really stop Putin will be defeat on the battlefield.
Yes, thank you very much, Jim Rice. We'll now move over to the Indo-Pacific for our next story. China and Russia have kicked off joint naval drills in the Sea of Japan. The Joint Sea 2025 exercises began on Sunday near Russia's Vladivostok and will last for 3 days. 4 Chinese warships, including 2 guided missile destroyers, are joining Russian vessels in submarine rescue, air defense and anti-missile operations. After the drills, the 2 nations will conduct naval patrols in the Pacific. China says the exercises aim to deepen strategic partnership with Moscow. We're once again joined by Jim Rice to discuss this further. Jim, what more can you tell us about this, and what are Moscow and Beijing, what's the message that they're trying to put across with these joint Sea 2025 exercises?
In a word, I suppose it's intimidation. Again, thanks for referring this question to me, Thomas. I greatly appreciate it because my family and I live in this region. We have done so for several years, and this is of great concern to people in the Philippines and people in Taiwan. Obviously, the PRC, the People's Republic of China, has expressed on many occasions its desire to invade and to conquer the sovereign nation and democratic nation of Taiwan. And they've intended to do this in the past by this fake offer of one country, two systems, which they pushed against the people of Hong Kong. And it turned out to be a complete lie, because there was no existing set of rights or democratic rule or local rule from Hong Kong people. It just became more and more repressive, resulting in the imposition of China's national security law in 2020. The people of Taiwan know this very well. They've known it for some time. They've rejected it. Increasingly, people in the Philippines are becoming aware of the danger that the PRC poses to this region in terms of its denial of the fishing rights and the exclusive economic zones of the Philippines. So we in this region see this as nothing less than bullying and intimidation.
Yes, Jim Rice, thank you very much, as always, for joining us on the programme. Pleasure to get your insight, particularly from that region. We now move on once again, and Russia's Ministry for Emergency Services has lifted a tsunami warning for the Kamchatka Peninsula after a magnitude 7.0 earthquake struck near the Kuril Islands. The ministry had said earlier on the Telegram that expected wave heights were low. However, they warned people to move away from the shore. Meanwhile, the Pacific Tsunami Warning System said there was no tsunami warning issued, a view echoed by the US Geological Survey, which also reported the quake at magnitude 7. Overnight, a volcano in Kamchatka also erupted for the first time in 600 years, according to Russia's RIA state news agency and scientists. Both the earthquake and the eruption could be linked to last week's powerful 8.8 magnitude quake in Russia's Far East, which triggered tsunami alerts as far away as French Polynesia and Chile. The Kuril Islands extend from the southern tip of Kamchatka and Russian scientists warned that shocks could continue in the region for several weeks. We're now joined by our correspondent and anchor, Asuma Katoka, to discuss this further. She's going to give us a bit more context. Asuma, what more can you tell us about this earthquake?
Thomas, yes, as you have mentioned that this tsunami warning has already been lifted. It hit the same region, the earthquake hit the same region, which at around 5:37 p.m. local time. This is one of many aftershocks waves. Probably everybody still remembers the recent earthquakes that was a record high 8.8 magnitude earthquake that hit on July 30th. This is still fresh in our minds. Ever since then, 125 earthquakes, aftershocks earthquakes have hit the region. Apparently some of them, including the one that was reported earlier today, which triggered the tsunami warning, even though the tsunami was said to be 19 centimeters only if it had occurred or reached the shore. But the Kamchatka's emergency services took a cautious decision, warning and alerting, and people living in these coastal regions must stay alert and keep an eye on these emergency services, as aftershocks are still continuing are set to continue for a few weeks until and for now, yes, the aftershocks include 6.7 magnitude earthquake that was hit today.
Yes, Asuma Katoka, thank you very much for joining us on NewsX World. Well, that is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you for joining us.